Welcome everybody. Today we're going to be learning about two new components or things to work with. One is a servo motor, and this is a special motor that turns to a specific angle. Usually servo motors don't spin all the way around. They just spin from like 0 to 180 or 0 to 270. You can buy continuous rotation servos, but the key thing about a servo motor is it keeps track what direction it's pointing in at all times. So it knows whether it's at 0 degrees or 180 or anything else. The motors in the VEX stuff are actually servo motors, and that's how they know how far they've spun. All right, so that's this simple motor right here. You'll have one in your kit. We're also going to use what's called a potentiometer. So this is just a knob, and we'll talk more about what the potentiometer does in just a second. You also need one of these three. They're called servo horns. They go on top of the servo so you can attach stuff to them. This will allow us to see the servo spinning. It doesn't matter which one you have, you just need one of those. And then you're also going to need header pins. These are basically a double-sided pin that you can use to connect stuff together. We'll see how we use this when we connect the servo motor. All right, so first things first, let's talk about what this is. This is a potentiometer. They come in a couple different things, but they're always a knob with 3 pins on them. In this case, the pins come out of the bottom. Oftentimes, they come out of the side. This potentiometer is interesting. So as we turn this knob, what happens is it increases the resistance inside the potentiometer. So we can tell, just like with the piano, we attached a different resistor to each button on the keyboard. That way we could see which key was or which button was being pressed by the voltage of the electrons going to that resistor. The higher the resistor, the lower the voltage of electrons. That allowed us to know if it's A key or G key or C key or whatever it was. Well, this is a similar thing, but instead of needing a bunch of different resistors, as I turn this, the resistance changes. So if I turn it in one direction completely, the electrons are going to come through about 5 volts, almost completely uninterfered with. If I rotate halfway to the other side, my electrons will come at 2.5 volts, all the way to the other side, super high resistance, and it's going to come through at almost 0 volts. So just from the voltage of the electrons going through here, I can tell whether it's turned to the left, the right, the middle, or anywhere in between. Really cool little device here. All right, to wire this, I'm going to first take it so that the 3 prongs, I'm going to put the center prong, it doesn't really matter how you do it, but I'm going to put the center prong like towards the Arduino, but again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to use these first 3 rows. That does not matter either. I do want to put it all the way to the side as I can, so I have at least 1 row of open pins in front of it, so I can connect it to the Arduino. Next thing I want to do is grab some wires. So I'm going to grab an orange wire to connect 5 volts to the positive rail. I only get 1 5-volt pin, so typically I want to use that. The first thing I want to do is always just wire that 5-volt rail or the positive rail with 5 volts. That way now I have all of these 5-volt pins instead of just one of them. So that's a good first step. Let me turn this inside so we can not block the other pins. And then I'm going to do the same thing for ground. I do have several grounds, but it's usually a good idea to open up several more. So I'm going to go from ground on this side to ground on this side. I'm just trying to orient the wires so they don't block the other pins and they're nice and neat and flat low to the ground. I don't want looping wires. Those are going to be hard to see what's going on. The flatter I can get them, the better off. All right, so now I've got positive and negative wired correctly. And now I need to run power to my good friend, the potentiometer. So how you wire a potentiometer is one of those outside 2 legs goes to 5 volts, the other goes to ground. So I'm going to grab a short wire here. Even shorter than that. So I'm going to grab a little short yellow wire. I think that'll fit. And I'm going to do my outside one to ground. So here, this far side is ground, and then I need one slightly longer wire. The blue one. I'm going to take this one to the 5 volt. Just like so. So I've got one side going to ground. That's this yellow one, maybe hard to see on the screen. And I've got a blue one going to the other outside one, and that's going to positive. It doesn't matter which one's positive or negative. What it does change is this. If I rotate towards the 5 volt one, that's where I'm going to have a 5 volt signal. So this is going to be high in this direction. When I rotate the other direction, it's going to go to low value. So if you want to the left to be high and the right to be low, then you do it this way. Otherwise, you can put this one, this side to ground and this side to positive, and you have the exact opposite situation where now that side's high and this side's low. All right, next thing I need to do is we need to read it. And that middle pin is the reading. This 3-wire configuration is really common for sensors with Arduino. There's usually 5 volt ground, and then there's a middle pin that's for reading stuff. We've seen that with a temperature sensor as well. So here in the middle pin, I'm going to take this over here, and I'm going to use pin A5 because it's a nice, easy connection in this location. And all I have to do, remember now, is I use pin A5 for my potentiometer. Now I've got my knob done. What we're going to do is we're going to use this knob to control the direction the servo motor is pointing. So I'm going to take the servo motor, and you'll notice I can't plug it in because there's like sockets here and sockets there. So I can't plug it in. That's the rule of the header pins. So I can insert the header pins into here and then put them in a row over here. Now remember, these rows are separate from these rows. So I'm just wiring it across from it just to keep the breadboard from getting cluttered. Just keep everything tight together. Okay. And then I'm going to choose one of mine, choose this one. And I'm just going to put this horn on here however I want. It doesn't matter which way it's pointing. I'm going to get rid of these other two. All right, and now I need to wire the servo motor. So again, the servo motor has 3 wires going to it. Okay, I'm actually going to move my servo location. I could leave it here, but to put the wires across this is going to get messy really fast, and we won't need the whole breadboard. So I'm going to actually pull the header pins out. I think I am at least. And then I'm going to actually attach this back next to the potentiometer, maybe a few rows away. All right. I think this would be cleaner for wiring. So first thing we need to do is black is ground, red is power, white is the signal. So white is the command from the Arduino about what angle the servo should be facing. And then red and black are just power and ground. So I'm going to grab a blue here, and I'm going to take this one to ground. Maybe a shorter wire. I'm going to grab an orange. And I'm going to go from black to ground. Oops. Okay, so that's black to ground, I believe, if I can see it well. And then I'm going to take a yellow. Maybe that'll get me from, yeah, positive red to 5 volts. So that provides the power to the motor. And then when you have a signal cable, this needs to go, the center white wire needs to connect to one of the PWM pins. That's one of these pins with the little tilde next to it. So here we have options between 3, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11 pins, those pins. So I'm going to take a wire from here, straight across, and then over slightly to pin 3. I think that's pin 3. And now I'm going to bend the wire so that it goes between the two. I can always see. The more often I can avoid crossing wires over each other, the easier finding mistakes will be for me. So I've got ground to black, 5 volt to red, and then a PWM pin, a little tilde pin, to to the center wire. All right, that does it for the wiring of this one. Now we just need to program it so that when we twist this knob, the motor will spin around. If I was wiring this over again, I probably would have put the motor to the outside and the potentiometer to the inside, because right now I'm reaching over the motor's connection. You know, live and learn. All right, my friends, I'll see you in the next video.